All right, guys, Wes here. Welcome to the channel, and I think we can all agree that Starfield is one of the most important games of this generation. The success of Starfield is a critical turning point for both Xbox, but more importantly, Bethesda game studios. And with just 49 days left until the global release of the game, I'm personally finding that there are more questions that I have about the game rather than answers. So today we will be exploring Starfield's unknowns to try to answer all of those burning questions we have. From the story's main antagonist to just how populated some planets and cities like New Atlantis will be. Along with that, we have some exciting news and updates for Starfield, so check the video chapters to optimize your viewing experience, and let's get started. Now, with the game as big and hyped as Starfield, there is just no denying that fans will do just about anything to try to pry as much information from the developers as they can. Well, according to the studio design director for Starfield, Emil Pagliarulo, it's basically pointless to ask him questions about the game because he simply can't answer. But the reasoning he gave was quite interesting. In a statement on Twitter, he said this, and I quote, "I know this isn't what any Starfield fan wants to hear from me, but I feel like I need to make this clear. No one other than Todd Howard himself is authorized to talk publicly about unreleased game info. That's the job of PR, marketing, and community folks. You have tons of questions, I get it, and my vague posting about the game doesn't help. I'm so humbled by your anticipation of Starfield, so it does pain me to say that I simply can't answer 99% of your questions." He then says, "I signed an NDA, I'm a professional, and I don't want to get fired," which I think is fair, and I think people should just kind of pump the brakes whenever it comes to tweets from Emil. But honestly, if we're being realistic, the reason that Emil is taking the brunt of the fandom is due to him being a lot more accessible than, say, Todd Howard, who doesn't currently have a Twitter account. But either way, it is super interesting that Todd is the only person allowed to talk about unreleased info for Starfield. Not even people like Phil Spencer or Pete Hines can talk publicly about the game. And speaking of Phil and Pete, I've kind of got a bone to pick with them. According to their Xbox profiles, they have both been playing Starfield for quite some time. So if you want a reason to be jealous, there are people out there actively playing Starfield right now. Now, for those of you that have a lot of questions about Starfield and you're not really finding answers, I'd like to talk about one of the biggest resources that I am using right now, and that is the unofficial Starfield compendium that is 5 years in the making, and it has 1,000 pages. So a user on the Reddit by the name of Gokama created a 1,000 page, 86,000 word Starfield information and analysis guide that's available right now to the public. I got a link in the description, but essentially what it is a full overview of literally everything you would want to know about Starfield in that guide. From all of the 2018 leaks, the official announcement and teaser trailers, to the episodic interviews with the developers, to the starting classes, the traits, the outfits, skills, research and crafting, outpost and spaceship building, breakdowns of multiple interviews from Todd Howard, and it's just an insane guide that I recommend you guys scrolling through, especially if you haven't really been following Starfield much. It's by far one of the most bizarre things that I've ever seen created by a community member of any video game, and for that I say thank you to Gokama. Moving right along, I'd like to talk about some articles from PC Gamer that has the entire Starfield community quite upset. Now, the article says this, and I quote, "Starfield's vision of the final frontier makes space seem like a boring and barren expanse. The subheader says it might be true to life, but it's not very conducive to fun RPG adventures." Now, a couple of quotes from the article. This one says, "All of the extraterrestrial excitement takes place against a backdrop that's visual equivalent of a SpaceX enthusiast desktop wallpaper." They then go on to say that as locations go, an airless, unoccupied void just isn't all that interesting. Now, I'm not saying that we should just dismiss what they're saying. Obviously, they have their opinion. I tend to disagree. I think the vastness of space and the fact that you are out there and you could land on a planet and be one of the first to explore it and experience the flora, the fauna, and resources that it has is something that does intrigue me. But the constant bashing from places like PC Gamer and Game Rant are just exhausting. Like this article right here, it's a little weird how much Starfield scanning looks exactly like No Man's Sky, right? The person said, "I'm not mad about it. I'm just surprised that Bethesda didn't come up with something more original." And while they are right, I just feel like this is something that most game developers do. Surveying or scanning objects in a game world is something that's not new either. Heck, back in Minecraft, back in like 2015, I used to play this mod called Thaumcraft, where you would have this object that you created called a thermometer, and you'd hold it up to your face and scan different blocks and items to research them, and then after you researched it, if you scan another of that same item, you would know exactly what it is. Like I said, this is not a new thing. Granted, Starfield's implementation is similar to No Man's Sky, and if I was Hello Games, that would be one of the most sincerest forms of flattery. Overall, I'm sure the constant bashing will continue, and I have a feeling the hate campaign for Starfield will likely ramp up closer to launch, and it's one of the reasons why I really hope Starfield launches in a really good state, because it would just be extra ammo for people that weren't even going to play the game in the first place. Now, on the topic of planets that can hold life, there are some concerns, which I think is fine to have. For me, it's less of a concern and more of just a question, and for me, it's how populated will those planets with life on them be? For instance, let's take the planet Jemison, which we know has the largest city city that Bethesda Game Studios has ever created called New Atlantis. Now, when you land on that planet, will there be any other handcrafted cities or settlements? Or is it a situation where each planet will have one central location, and then from there, the surrounding areas will all be procedural? It would be a bit odd that a planet like Jemison, which has been the home of human life for 169 years, only features one residential point of interest. To give you kind of a visual representation, take this screenshot right here. You can see New Atlantis, and then surrounding the area, it has a mining facility, and then we've got an industrial outpost that are most likely procedural. So unless the planet has other residential locations that are undiscovered, Jemison will likely only have New Atlantis. Now, if this ends up being the same for other planets that have cities, this might, keyword might, add credence to the empty planet concerns that people have. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with having concerns, but at least try to be genuine with it and not fully biased for clicks. By far, one of the biggest unknowns for Starfield is who will be the main antagonist of the story. But to do that, we have to kind of set the stage. We have to go all the way back 20 plus years before our journey in Starfield eventually begins. In the year 2310 AD, the first colony war between the United Colonies and the Freestar Collective concluded, which marked the start of uneasy peace between the factions, with the Freestar Collective winning the war and retaining its independence. We don't exactly know how the colony war started, but the uneasy peace times have serious implications for how the main story of Starfield could play out. As of right now, the only thing that we know about the main story is our quest in searching for artifacts with Constellation, with the goal of figuring out the mysteries of the universe. When it comes to figuring out who the antagonist of the game will be, it really isn't that simple. In fact, I think it all depends on the player's choice. The reason why I believe that it's choice driven is due to how the factions work in the game. We're able to join any faction in Starfield, and the game won't make us choose one or the other. However, the choices that we make in a faction will have lasting effects on the overarching story, which is why I think Starfield, our choices will determine whether or not the settled systems will continue the uneasy peace times or choose to go nuclear by instigating conflict that will bring upon the second interstellar colony war, which honestly sounds incredible. Starting the war between the settled systems and the main story might be another reason why the first story DLC of Starfield is named Shattered Space. A once peaceful settled systems is now shattered due to wartime, or it could be named that because of the aliens that we find due to the artifact being created, but who knows, only time will tell. Now, this next question I touched on in my last video, and that is whether or not we will be able to fly anywhere in a given system without requiring you to use the gravity drive and jump via your star map. With the game potentially having an autopilot feature and requirement of an SSD, it would be a bit strange to not be able to freely fly in a system without using the star map. We know that as you get closer to a planet, the locations on the planet will start to pop up, and it's speculated that once you get close, you can press a button to land, or it'll just open your star map. But what about free roaming star systems? Will there be boundaries that after a certain distance away from the planet, it will automatically open your star map and ask you where you want to go? Is the gravity jump basically just a cutscene in between the planets you travel to? If so, that would be a bit disappointing, and it would kind of question what the point of flying our ship would be if it's all cutscenes and not free exploration. Each planet having a circular boundary to explore with random events, pirates, spaceports, asteroids, and so on and so forth does sound fun, but being tethered to a planet could break the immersion for some. So at the minimum, if we could freely explore in a system, I'm fine with leaving interstellar exploration as a pipe dream for modders to eventually add to the game. Moving on, we recently got the AMD specifications for Starfield on PC. Now, I gotta say, these AMD specs seem a little bit weird with how they're formatted, but either way, let's go ahead and talk about them right now. So first off, we have the legendary experience, which is 4K for the no compromise 4K gamers who want the absolute best of Starfield experience. The featured CPU is an AMD Ryzen 7 7800X3D. The GPU, they have a Radeon 7900 XT, and then a featured motherboard that is an X670. For the epic experience, they have for the CPU, the Ryzen 7 7900X. The GPU has an RX 6800 series, and then for the heroic, a 1080p display is a Ryzen 5 7600 and a featured GPU that is a 7600 as well. So you kind of get the point. They don't really give you the full specs here. This was mainly just a hashtag ad. Honestly, if you want the full specs, I recommend checking the game out on Steam to get a baseline of what kind of system that you need when Starfield eventually releases. Next up, I want to talk about where we go from here. With Starfield's release date getting closer and closer as the days go by, will we get any more official information or gameplay walkthroughs from Todd Howard and the rest of the team? And are we going to be lucky enough to get another Starfield Direct? I'm personally holding out hope for raw gameplay previews and impressions from industry professionals and content creators covering various aspects and impressions of the game, similar to how Nintendo does their previews, which is typically a week prior to the game's launch. Honestly, I think it really depends on how confident BGS is in this game. If it's a fully optimized and complete experience, I think it's possible that they start to pull up the curtain and show off even more of the game in more of a raw format. However, the fact that no one at the studio is allowed to publicly talk about Starfield might not bode too well for their launch plans. Granted, I think that's mainly just for story spoilers and stuff that they don't want to get out that are secret. I am personally hoping that Todd Howard gives us one more journey throughout Starfield during the pre-launch stage of the game. We know that Xbox is set to have their biggest booth ever at this year's Gamescom, which will be releasing shortly before Starfield is out. So at the bare minimum, I'm looking forward to seeing what that event holds. As for a Starfield Direct, I think it's safe to assume that that one is our one and only Direct, which I'm personally fine with. It was one of the best showcases I've watched, and I just don't know if they could top that, especially considering the news that 92 million people tuned into the Xbox Game Showcase plus Starfield Direct. I don't know how much bigger it's going to get from there, but it's safe to say that the hype for this game is still as big as ever, and I am personally looking forward to the release in September. But yeah, guys, that is going to wrap it up with this video. Let me know what your thoughts are on Starfield. What questions do you have that are still left unanswered, and do you think the game will live up to the hype? But yeah, guys, thank you once again for watching this video. If you really enjoyed my coverage, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel, and press the like button if you enjoyed the video. And until next time, this has been Wes, and I'll talk to you guys again soon.